Anthony Pompliano, huge Bitcoin supporter, entrepreneur, guy who was in the world of Bitcoin very, very early on, speaking with CNBC's Squawk Box about Bitcoin and the new all-time high.
And Bitcoin is basically back to those record highs from a couple of years ago. Joining us now is Anthony Pompliano, a founder of Pomp Investments. And it's kind of a fool's errand to ever try to figure out where Bitcoin is headed. But just in terms of things that are on the horizon, we got the halving coming up. We've had the ETF that was recently, spot ETFs are now becoming more mainstream. And how long has it been? Has it been 2 months? It started maybe a little bit slow, but then it's been like kind of a rocket ship.
If you look over the last 60 days and in the next 60 days, I think there's two big stories. The ETF approvals obviously were a huge deal. BlackRock alone has $11 billion in their ETF. They added $1 billion just in the last day. And so these are massive inflows for just one fund. Wild. There's 11 of them. And so obviously there's tons of money coming in, about 12 times more demand for Bitcoin than what the network is producing every single day. But also, as we near this record high, if we go back and we look at past record high breaks, or if we eclipse the old all-time high, 3 of the 4 times Bitcoin doubled in 18 days or less. And so if you think about that for a second, once you break through an all-time high, it's price discovery. What is this thing worth? The world is going to try to figure that out.
Open range breakout.
3 of the last 4 times in 18 days or less, it doubled in price. You add in the fact that we have the halving coming, and we're going to go from 900 Bitcoin a day coming into the supply to 450. And it's very hard to make an argument that Bitcoin is not going much higher and at a faster pace than we all expected.
I mean, when you do the math, I feel like I need to say that past results are not indicative necessarily of the future, because it just you sound so, I mean, it just sounds that anyone at home would, you know, if they're totally new at this game, they might mortgage their house and put it all in Bitcoin. And there is still risk in the asset, is there not?
I definitely don't think that they should do that, right? If you go and you ask most people in the Bitcoin world, they will tell you higher percentages than you would expect in terms of what they've put in. But I think 1 to 5% for a traditional portfolio ends up making sense.
But you just made a case for going from 70 to 140 in 18 days. I mean, that sounds like things that
Imagine
you hear on
if that
TV
happens.
you just want to really stay away from.
Bitcoin's up 20% in the last week. It's up 60% in the last month, and it's up 200% in the last year. I'm not saying it's going to 140,000. What I'm saying is 3 of the last 4 times, it doubled in 18 days. And with a halving upon us, it's just hard to not say this is likely to go much.
Side note, he's saying 3 out of the last 4, it doubled in 18 days. The 4th time, it doubled in 80 days, 80. So it still happened within 3 months.
Much higher. And so what I think also we start to pay attention to here is, look, there's 3 main new buyers that are now going to come into the market. The first is public pension funds, right? We had a fund. It was anchored by 2 public pension funds in Fairfax County. Catherine Molnar and Andy Speller were the CIOs there. And they're up 12x on their exposure to Bitcoin in that fund. And so when you see that, you say to yourself, wait a second, there's only 4 funds last year in all of state public pension funds that were fully funded. If they all went and put 1% in Bitcoin, there's a very strong possibility that a number of those funds would get back to fully funded status over the next 10, 15, 20 years. On top of that, you got sovereign wealth funds. They've been very quiet right now. There's now ETF opportunities for them. They don't have to go buy Bitcoin.
Dude, when that Saudi money comes into Bitcoin,
backlash, they can simply go get the exposure without actually holding the Bitcoin. If a sovereign wealth fund comes out, especially a major one, and says, we've bought Bitcoin and it is a material percentage now of our portfolio, I think that there will be a global race between countries.
Do you think gold is up in sympathy with Bitcoin? I mean, why is
no,
or
monetary
is there
policy?
The 34 trillion, inflation is coming down. Is it 34 trillion? Is it the number? Is it the amount of debt and how quickly it's growing that has Bitcoin and gold both strong in recent sessions or in recent months?
If you go and you look, one of the critiques of Bitcoin was it was a 0 interest rate phenomenon, right? Oh, if rates are down, Bitcoin's up. Yeah. If rates go up, Bitcoin comes down.
They haven't come down.
Well, rates are up and Bitcoin is back to an all-time high. Stocks are up, et cetera. So what Bitcoin has become is a index for global liquidity. And although the Fed, the ECB, and Japan are actually contracting their balance sheets, China has been basically giving the middle finger to the rest of the global economy. Okay. And they're saying, hey, we're going to ease here. We're going to go and put liquidity into the market. And so Bitcoin is a big, big winner. If you believe that the dollar is going to continue to be debased over the coming decade, Bitcoin's going to be a winner. And if you think global liquidity is going to go up, Bitcoin's going to be a winner there too.
And what's gold's market cap? Is it that's
10 trillion or so?
10 to 12 trillion. Yeah. Some people are looking for Bitcoin to be 10%. 50% of the market cap. You think it could
Well
be a
spoken.
multiple of the market cap of gold?
Today, Bitcoin at 1.35 trillion. It's bigger than the U.S. high yield bond market. It's bigger than the silver market.
But it's a tenth of gold.
That's
And
fine.
you think it could go to half of gold? That'd be...
It used to be 1% of gold. Now it's 10%. Eventually it's going to be 100%. And eventually it's going to go past gold.
So that'd be over $1 million a coin.
Because Bitcoin is a 10x improvement on gold. And if you're a 10x improvement, to be 2 times the market cap would make sense.
Okay. So you're bullish.
Very bullish on
Kidding. I know. I'm gathering that. And no matter, you know my feelings on this, and I have not been quiet. I'm still going to get grief for questioning you at all from the hodlers. And that's the other thing. No one's selling.
We could be wrong.
But if the network isn't producing any and no one's selling, then where the hell are these ETFs going to get the Bitcoin?
Yes.
So that's all.
We could be wrong, but the probability is that it's going higher.
All right. Anthony, thank you.
Probability is that it's going higher. Let's actually dive into that. So why are we at this point now with crypto ripping? Well, okay, as Anthony referred to, okay, global liquidity going up, some weird things going on in China. People might want a store of value outside of their local native currency because of debasement. That makes sense in a higher level view. But really, the excitement has come from in January, mid-January, the spot ETF approval. You had 11 new kids on the block, and the top one, BlackRock, IBIT, already has $11 billion in assets under management. This is the highest appetite asset we've ever seen in Wall Street. This is heading into now mid-April when we had the halving. Historically, the halving has been very, very bullish for Bitcoin. So we have the spot ETF approval, we have the upcoming halving, and then later on, we're going to have loosening of monetary policy. That's what happens when we're at $34 billion in debt. That's what happens when you have a $1.5 trillion deficit. That's what happens when you're in a political election year, when the people within power are just going to act like drunken sailors when it comes to the money printer to get a couple more votes, not realizing that it's prompting more inflation, more debasement. Of course, there's going to be desire for something that has a store of value. And then when the aspects and the nuances of that thing, i.e. Bitcoin, have very limited supply, 21 million, that's the max ever. And it's estimated that anywhere from 2 to 6 million of those have already been lost from people's keys, forgetting, death, all that stuff. Obviously, that's the theoretical max, but the number is going to be lower and it's just going to keep driving lower. This is a very, very basic supply versus demand issue. When you have supply that has a max value, and if is anything dwindling, and demand but is doing nothing but going up, price has to pick up. This is the most rudimentary supply-demand crossover chart. And the fact that this is somehow lost on a lot of mainstream media, especially within the financial sector, it blows my mind. This is one of the easiest mathematical equations to explain why Bitcoin would go up. And yet some people are very dubious of it. And at a certain point, you want to shake them, be like, how would you not understand this? But who cares? The price action itself is proving that people missed out on it. Okay, you missed out on it. If you don't get it, you don't get it. And if they're going to get really interested when it keeps going higher and higher and higher. It's funny. People are unwilling to buy it when it's sub 20K, but then when it goes over 100, they're going to be chasing after it like no other. If anything, they're perfectly timing it the wrong direction. They're going to buy it when it's extremely high and forget about it if it takes a hit. And they're doing the exact opposite. And we've seen this cycle historically. It's going to repeat into the future. And at a certain point, you just hope more people would finally wake up to what's actually legitimately going on.